Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's Robert Phoenix, broadcasting you live from Fredericksburg, Texas, and it is 9/11 day, 9/11/19. So we have a really, really interesting kind of palindrome. Isn't it fascinating? We've got 9/11/19. So we have 9/11 coming from both sides of the equation. This is a very interesting day indeed. And interesting things have happened over the last 24 hours, which we're going to cover today. And before I do that, we're going to get into a little astrology because sometimes you people like to have a little astrology in your lives in the morning. It's been kind of an interesting time and not an easy time. Definitely not an easy time. I'll get into that a little bit. Let me just check in with what's going on over on the YouTube side of things. See what's happening with you folks. There's Zyla and Paula and Judy. Good morning over there. We got 13 people watching now. 9/11/9/11. This day will never happen again. We will never have another 9/11 day like this. Isn't it wild? Unless we get up to 3019, then we'll have another 9/11 day. But not like this. Not in the midst of it. And there's a lot going on. Got my white cat T-shirt. Love it. Looks even better in person. Oh, good. Hey, Jennifer, how's it going? And there's Ian. Hi, Ian and Maury. Just a quick update on the White Cat T-shirts. I'm still dealing with a Mercury retrograde faux pas on the printer side, which was kind of a bummer. They sent me the wrong sizes. So I've been recorrecting that. I did have a few sizes that were right. Some of those people got them. So just to let you know, Isla got hers. I'm just waiting. Hopefully this week I'll get the others, and we'll get them all out as soon as I get them in. So yeah, it's a nice T-shirt, I have to say. Hey, Michael, from the Heartland. There's Liz. Hey, evening. Wow, weird energy there. Yeah, you got that right. And there's FUP77. What's going on, FUP77? So why don't we get into let's get into some astrology, shall we? Why not? I think it's worth getting into because the energy has been crazy. Hey, give me a little feedback on the mic. So I got this condenser mic and these headphones, so I can get a little more mobile, and so just let me know how it sounds, so I can move around a bit more and do a little different location stuff and get better audio. So let me know how it sounds. Okay. All right, let's get into the chart of the moment. There it is. That's what we're looking at today. Of course, I grabbed this just before we went on the air, 8:27 a.m. So it's just so right now we're probably about I'd say maybe about 3 degrees going on 4 degrees Libra. And look at the opposition here. The opposition is big, and it's also now we're kind of locked into this T-square, and the T-square. It played a role yesterday in John Bolton getting sacked, and we're going to talk about that. John Bolton is a Sagittarius. He got caught in this crossfire between what's going on here with all the Virgo planets, the stellium and Virgo, and of course Neptune and Pisces. On the other side of John Bolton, where his sun is, right around Jupiter, on the other side, over here in Gemini, is where Mike Pence's sun is, and Mike Pence has a Sagittarian moon. No, Mike Pence is a Gemini moon. My bad. It's Trump who has the Sagittarian moon. So Mike Pence and John Bolton were involved in a little case of how do we say this? Diplomatic cock blocking. Trump wanted to meet with the Taliban. They did not want him to meet with the Taliban, and it was going to be a Camp David thing. Am I right? Maybe they're going to clone all the Taliban members and then gift them with Motel 6s and 7-Elevens. Anyway, so I would say Mike Pence needs to watch his back. I don't think Mike Pence is going to be I don't think he's going to be the vice president of this next election. If we can get to this next election, I don't think it's going to be him. I think Mike Pence signed his death warrant by choosing to get in the way of Trump's plans to create a solution or at least let the coffee boy, Avi, Avi Berkowitz, create the new solution for the Middle East. So let's just get into this. I'll get into more of the Bolton stuff in a minute. But this is really, there's a lot going on right now. There's just a ton of stuff with this T-square. And, to try to articulate this in a lot of ways is that with all this emphasis, heavy emphasis in Virgo, there is an incredible tendency to feel, what's the word? To feel really critical, really, really judgmental in one's life, especially with the Neptune opposition. And it's we have to sort through what's real, and that takes time. And with a beautiful T-square, everything is kind of really up in the air in a lot of ways. So taking time is not always easy. If it were, like, say, a fixed T-square, well, you could take all the time you want because that shit's not moving. But with a mutable T-square, there's always kind of something being introduced into the environment or into the psychic theater. So there's a really strong tendency here to get into the kind of the how do I say this? Kind of the intense lesser value of Virgo. When I say lesser value, it has to do with judgment, criticism, feeling like you're not living up to some kind of a standard, right? With Neptune on the other side, like Neptune represents the dream, Neptune represents the illusion. And so what's really important, though, too, at the same time, is like you got to take a reality check with what's going on. Like, so it's a really fine line between not being blown out by what you don't have or what you haven't accomplished, or staring at your warts in the mirror and wanting to just crawl back into bed. It's a really fine line between that and actually being able to kind of look at where you are and really come up with kind of a level-headed assessment. And the trine with Saturn and Pluto helps a bit. It helps a bit. The level-headed assessment is kind of it's an out here, right? There's an out. But this is very difficult, and I was swimming in it yesterday. I was really swimming in it yesterday. And I was in the swamp, to be honest with you, And just from, it's just about what I do, because of all the Virgo that's bringing what I do up to the top of my chart, and then the opposition to Neptune. And not that I'm questioning what I'm doing, but at times I question the value and the worth of what I'm doing. And I'll be real honest with you, being really honest with you. Like I do that Sunday night show, 2 hours of astrology, and I guess I should be thankful for you guys putting up with me for 2 hours. But it's 2 hours worth of astrology, and I do it for a lot of reasons. I do it because I enjoy it. It's fun. It's interactive. It's creative. It lets me, put things together. And at the same time, I also do it because I like to promote what I do as an astrologer, as somebody who's in the field, and with the hopes that I would get some readings and clients. And I have to say, that's not really the case. Those 2 hours are not converting for me. Now, it's cool because it's, life's all energy and everything, but it's not converting for me. It's just not. And so I'm having to rethink on some level kind of what I'm doing, because I need to pay my bills and I need to take care of business, and I got expenses that are in my future that I've got to stare down. So I'm not going to stop it anytime soon. I'm going to continue to do it, but it's bringing this Neptune Virgo opposition up. It's like, why am I doing it? On some level, I know why I'm doing it. But if I'm being really Virgoan and pragmatic and realistic, the ROI on those 2 hours on Sunday night is terrible. Just from a Virgoan standpoint, it's terrible. So one of the things that I'm going to have to think about is I'm either going to have to, I can't do Patreon because, I guess I could do Patreon, but I don't know. I'd have to see how Patreon works. But I'm going to have to kind of revisit what I'm doing on Sunday nights. I'm just being straight up and honest. So, that's TBD in the future. But this is what I'm talking about here. This is because it's really easy to get caught up in this stellium, and everybody's got Virgo somewhere in their chart. Okay, for me, it's at the top of the chart, 9th house, 10th house, so I'm looking at it from a career perspective. You've got it going on, and so the challenge is, how do you get real and not get sort of, down in the cups, and at the same time, how can you be realistic about the whole thing? And that's what's going on, because Neptune is such a heavy, I think Neptune is kind of a dark cloud right now. And wherever all this Virgo is, you've got it in your chart, and you've got Neptune opposing it. Now let's get into the square with Jupiter, which is an interesting square because in the realm of oppositions, the way that you can resolve an opposition is by finding the midpoint. And here's the midpoint. It's Jupiter and Sagittarius. And I wrote about this on my website, and I put it up on Facebook. And Jupiter and Sagittarius comes in, and it's like, hey, look, there's a higher solution here. Try to get out of the polarity. Yes, it does, Jupiter's squaring. And Jupiter squares are not bad squares, by the way, because they kind of force you in a positive sense to go beyond your limitations, right? So in this case, Jupiter's squaring Virgo and saying, hey, look, get out of that kind of concentrated, intense inversion. Raise the vision and, find the value. Right, this Jupiter and Sagittarius right now is playing sort of the lord of the chart, and over there with the square to Neptune, which we've been going through for quite a while now. I mean, this has been kind of ridiculous for the Neptune square, but it's also saying basically, how can you go beyond? How can you go beyond your perceived spiritual limitations? Right. That's what it says to me. It's like, okay, how could you find a deeper level of faith in your life and in your path, and it all sort of theoretically would work out here. So the midpoint is really the key. We've got a Aquarian moon today, which I actually really like. It gives us a sense of detachment, right? Gives us a sense of detachment, and it gives us a sense of being able to step back, look, which is obviously detachment, maybe laugh, find something quizzical, kind of astrologically with the astrological weather. Now, this does play a role with what's happening with this guy right here, John Bolton. There he is, the walrus. It was really funny. Yesterday, I was at the grocery store, H-E-B, and I swear to God, the guy in front of me was the dead ringer for John Bolton. I like to chat people up in the grocery line. I think it's fun. Anyway, I didn't say, hey, you look like John Bolton. Hey, anybody ever tell you look like John Bolton? Anybody ever tell you that? You don't say that to a guy who, the guy that he looks like, it was probably one of the most powerful positions on the planet, okay? Just got kicked to the curb. It wouldn't be entirely flattering. So I talked to the checker. I said, hey, do you know who John Bolton is? She's a grown woman, not a girl. She said, no, I don't know who he is. And I said, well, he's a former Secretary of Defense for the U.S., for the United States, and Trump just fired him. It's amazing how few people actually know who John Bolton is. This is one of the most powerful dudes in the world, one of the most powerful positions on the planet. And I didn't judge her. It's like, oh yeah, well, he's the Secretary of Defense. He just got canned. So Bolton falls prey to the T-square, because that's where his sun is, right? And if you go back and you listen to the Sunday night show and some of the stuff I did last week, I said right around 9/11 something's going to come up, and I had a feeling that Trump would be involved because of his Gemini status and his relationship with the twins, the Twin Towers. I've been spending more time thinking about Trump and the whole Gemini effect, and it's really interesting if you think about it. He's like Gemini, so freakish Gemini. Like if you go back and you look at The Apprentice, which was an incredibly popular show, and he was very, very successful with The Apprentice. What was The Apprentice about? It was about pitting two sides against one another, right? And apparently he's always done this. He always has people inside of his administration or inside of his companies that are diametrically opposed. He does this on purpose because what he wants is he wants to see people in conflict. He wants to see them compete. And apparently he's doing the same thing with Ivanka and Don Jr. in terms of, well, who am I going to favor in terms of, being the next president of the United States if I can broker that deal. So even in his own family, there was competition. And I think early on he was indoctrinated into it by his father. And apparently he had a very contentious relationship with his older brother. And one of the things that Donald Trump did is he apparently bullied his older brother. And the dad bullied him too. And so what they saw was firsthand what weakness looks like. And that whatever happened in the Trump household to the older brother drove him to drink, and eventually he killed himself. I think that's a lot of what Trump's Pluto in the 12th house is that somehow he has to reconcile that in some ways, that he was a part of it. But it was also, I think, part of his indoctrination. Anyway, he's just incredibly Gemini in that way, and fascinating to watch. But it's through everything. It is through everything, and he's got that Gemini ability to flip, and be disruptive. So let's get back to Bolton for a second. Now, I did say that right around 9/11, we would get something that was pretty juicy, and it doesn't get much more juicy than John Bolton getting sacked around 9/11. Well, why is that? It's because John Bolton was John Bolton's a neocon, and we have to talk about that because that's an important piece of this puzzle. John Bolton is a neocon, and the neocons ran the 9/11 operation. And as I mentioned or talked about fairly in depth, Trump knew about what happened on 9/11. He knows. He totally knows. Trump is an information broker, and he knows what happened on 9/11. He knows Larry Silverstein. He knows all the builders. He knows all the money people. He knows the story inside and out. He knows what happened. So Bolton was part of the crew that ran 9/11. He was part of that team. He was part of the Bush cabal that ran 9/11 in conjunction with the Saudis and the Israelis. So we had a faction of the government inside of our government, which were the neocons, and they were rolling this thing out because they were ready to bust out the Patriot Act, the war on terror, which has now been transitioned and moved over to the domestic war on terror, meaning that they're now focused solely on U.S. citizens and creating the very dark tableau that it's U.S. citizens, people in this country, who pose the greatest danger and risk. So they transitioned that, and that transition happened, I would say, fairly early on in the Trump administration, because there was a fair amount of kind of that Islamic holdover while Barack Obama was president. There were people that were, coerced by the FBI to do stupid shit. There was the shooting at Fort Hood. So the remnants of that Islamic terror threat, that extreme terror threat, were still being played out while Obama was president. And if you think about it, it's a pretty interesting angle to the psyop, because while Obama never openly stated that he is a Muslim, pretty much everybody knew he was, especially with a name like Barack Hussein Obama. And there were videos where he, slip of the tongue. And so what we had this interesting psyop, this sort of weird cognitive dissonance, which was, okay, we're going to put this guy up here. He looks, smells, feels like a Muslim, so we're going to have the fake Muslim terror threats so that we can boil a certain part of society, a certain part. And I never bought into any of that shit, by the way. That's not to say that there aren't extreme Muslims. That's not to say that there aren't, groups inside of the Muslim world that would, be more than happy to carry out a fatwa. But I never bought into that, because a lot of the Muslims I've met have been actually pretty cool people and pretty, what's the word I'm looking for? Refined in a lot of ways. So, I was never going to jump into their Islamophobe psyop. It was a bunch of bullshit. And all you had to do is watch who was running. It was Pamela Geller and, basically a boatload of Zionists who were running that psyop. It's like, no, I'm not gonna dive into that pile of manure. But what happened now is that Trump became president, and what is he? He's a white guy, right? And so now what do we have? We have white terrorists. Theoretically, you see how this works? And this is the weird kind of dynamic of the Gemini world of polarity that we're living in, the occult magic of Gemini. And there's nothing wrong with being a Gemini. By the way, just an aside, I've been tracking Antonio Brown, and I'm actually working on a new website. I'm trying to put it together, running into all kinds of problems. But I've been tracking Antonio Brown, who is just completely putting gas on the NFL season and just lighting the match everywhere he goes. And Antonio Brown has Mercury, Venus, and the Moon all in Gemini. Moon, Venus conjunct Mercury opposition Uranus. He's a wild card, and you're not going to be able to control this guy. And I've been, to me, it's interesting because, again, it's a kind of a cultural touch point, and this is the NFL's 100th season. And I'll get back to Trump and Bolton and all that stuff. Just give me 1 second. I just have to touch on this. But there was this really weird thing that happened in the last preseason game when Andrew Luck, when he retired from football. It had such a weird vibe. I'm like, man, this is not good for the NFL. There's just something weird about this. He's a Virgo, number one, so he's getting caught in that crossfire, that T-square. And number two, he was supposed to be, one of the NFL's mainstays. This was a guy that the NFL was banking on being in the league for the next 8 to 9 years and being a marquee player. He steps away, and he steps away in a really weird way. Like the last preseason game, and somebody leaks it out, and the fans in Indianapolis who were there at the final game, and he's there on the sidelines in street clothes, they start booing the guy. It was a very weird scene, okay? Very, very weird scene. And I thought to myself, this does not bode well for the NFL. Not this 100th season. This is going to go wrong. There's some stuff here that's just going to go completely wrong. So the first game of the season was the Bears and the Packers, and the total score was 13. Okay, no matter what you think of 13, there is a connotation around 13, cultural connotation. The score of the New England Patriots and Steelers game, which happened on Sunday night, was 33-3. So we have 3-3-3 as part of that score. Antonio Brown was just basically dumping on the NFL all through training camp. And then he signs with the New England Patriots. Well, today it's come out that there's a woman who's accusing him of rape. And this is one of their star players. And it's really fascinating to watch. And he's part of this T-square action that's going on right now as well. So we can see astrology in action, and it's having a pretty powerful implosion on the NFL. Anyway, let's get back to Trump and Bolton. So Bolton is a neocon, and these are the guys that were running the show. They set it all up. They had the Patriot Act, Project for a New American Century, all this stuff that they had cooked up at the Brookings Institute, the American Enterprise Institute, GINSA. These are all the think tanks that they basically hung out at. And you had guys like Paul Wolfowitz and Richard Pearl and William Crystal. And these are all the sons and the followers of the neocons. Irving Kristol, who was William Crystal's father, was one of the founders of this kind of whole neocon sect. And where do they come out of? They come out of this kind of branch of the radical Trotskyites who were in Mexico. You know, they were exiled from Russia because they wanted to get back in. Trotsky wanted to run the place, and Stalin said, "That's not going to happen. I'm going to send somebody to Mexico. I'm going to put an ice pick in the back of that motherfucker's head, right?" But he wasn't alone. He wasn't just hanging out there with Frida Kahlo and having Diego Rivera watch them copulate together, because I bet you that's what happened. Right? It got that freaky, right? But he had people around him, and so the Trotskyites left Mexico and they came into the United States, and that's where we have the seeds of the neocons. They're originally Trotskyites, so they were on the left, and then they made a decision to make a pivot because the right was going to be the place to be. That was going to be ultimately where they could get their hooks in and promote their war agenda, because they're warmongers. And they figured that out, and they started to get into the right, and started to get into that kind of nesting right around Reagan, and then they really got in, around Nixon, and they really got in around Reagan. So John Bolton's a neocon, he comes from that group, and now he's out. He's dispossessed. Now, what do you think this is going to do? First of all, they're going to need to find a new Secretary of Defense. Now, this is not some minor kind of position, okay? You also have to realize that there are people that were under Bolton and faithful to Bolton. So you're going to have those people in the White House, and they're going to be loose cannons. And Trump may not be able to handle them, although he may be able to smoke them out. So replacing Bolton is going to be really, really important. And luckily, they've got this guy Dunford, who is the brigadier general who can kind of handle things. But Bolton was he was a warmonger, and he was doing everything essentially for his neocon masters. And I wondered why Trump brought him in. You know, why did he replace McMaster with Bolton? Was it because, you know, he was trying to smoke the neocons out? What was his deal? Keep your friends close and your enemies closer. John Bolton has a very strong allegiance to Israel, as all the neocons do, because the Israelis that are in power are Zionists. That's basically what the neocons are. They're Zionists. They're leftist, fascist Zionists, and Zionists can. A lot of people think Zionists, you know, are just kind of right-wing oriented. No, they can actually be hardcore left too. Okay. So anyway, that said. He's gone. He is gone. And there's a big vacuum and a big void. And so one has to wonder, you know, where is Netanyahu around all this? Because Netanyahu has been leaning on the neocons for a really long time. Now, apparently, Netanyahu has an election coming up next week. And I thought they just had an election, right? You know, I thought he just defeated this other guy. But apparently he's got another one coming up. I mean, these countries where they like call these elections and is weird. I don't quite get these other systems. I get our system, but I don't get their other systems. It's like Salvini, I'm calling an election. You know, it's like, okay, I guess if you can do that, more power to you. You know. Anyway, so Netanyahu has got an election coming up, and there seems to be a bit of a disturbance in the force. Now, we know that Netanyahu and Jared Kushner and Charles Kushner are just three peas in a little pod, right? They're just three peas in a little pod. So, you know, is Netanyahu in danger of losing his position? Well, he's actually in a very kind of interesting place, because now what he wants to do, and probably with the help of Jared Kushner, is he wants to fast track a new plan for the Middle East. And it is not a good story for the Palestinians. Let me tell you. So I'll get to that too. Where does Trump go from here? Who does he bring in to be the Secretary of Defense? Will he promote Mike Pompeo? Another guy who I think is wholly unimpressive. By the way, Mike Pompeo has presidential designs. Can you believe that? And why are all these people like fat fucks? I've asked this question before. Why can't you work out? You look at Salvini. That dude's a stud. Okay, I don't know if he can be a leader, but he's a stud. He's on the beach. He's playing volleyball. I mean, the guy's a beast. Why can't people in power in this country take care of their fucking bodies and eat the right food so that when they go out on the world stage, they're not sauntering around like Jabba the Hutt? Why can't they do that? Just think how much more impressive it would be. You go into a meeting with these guys, these other heads of state, and you're like cut, you're buffed. I mean, you don't have to look like Chris Cuomo. It's a little over the top. But geez, let's get representative here. You've got access to all the greatest like gyms and trainers. If Trump spent half the time he does playing golf and working with a trainer, he'd look a lot different. By the way, I don't begrudge him playing golf. Some people do, I don't. Excuse me. Anyway, Pompeo wants to be president. Good luck on that. Mike Pence, see ya, man. It's been fun. It's been nice. I don't think he can carry Trump. Trump's going to need to find somebody to get on the ticket that makes a splash and moves the needle. Who would that be? Personally, I think it should be Tucker Carlson. That's who I think he should replace Mike Pompeo with. Not Pompeo, Mike Pence. There's also rumor that Tucker Carlson could be Secretary of Defense. I don't think that's the right role for him, though. I really don't. I think he's definitely a dove. He's not a hawk. And the military-industrial complex has a lot invested in perpetual war and selling arms all over the planet. So I don't know if Tucker's the right guy for that. Although he's probably be a great guy. But you're dealing with a very, very entrenched part of the American economy and the military and all those contractors. I'm not sure how that they would really stand for that for very long. So he might get somebody who's an insider. But I'd love to see Tucker Carlson with Trump. Do you think Tucker Carlson would move the needle? If Trump is sagging in the polls, do you think Tucker Carlson would move the needle? How do you think Tucker Carlson would be in a debate? How about that? How about Tucker Carlson taking on Bernie Sanders? I'd pay to see that. I would actually pay pay-per-view cable to watch Tucker Carlson debate Bernie Sanders. Oh, he'd shred him alive. So Tucker's in the mix. I get this feeling he's in the mix. Keep your eye on Tucker. Remember, I did their charts hand in glove. Hand in glove. It's a good fit. What are the neocons going to do? What are the neocons? Now, they're not going to just say, oh, gee, thanks, Don. Thanks. It was really great having John in there. You really represented us. We really appreciate that. And, we're going to get right behind you when your election rolls out. Yeah, thanks, man. You're the best. You think they're going to say that? You think they're going to say that? These are Trotskyites, okay? Their lineage helped stage the Russian Revolution. They come from Bolshevik roots. They slaughtered, what? How many people? Like 10 million people? 20, whatever the number it is that dwarfs the Holocaust, which is a mighty big number. That's what they did, okay? These guys come from that. That's their line. That's what they descend from, ideologically and genetically. So do you think they're going to play nice? Trump's got a war in his hands now. He may not have a war in Iran. He may not have a war in Yemen. But he's going to have a war with the neocons. And he's going to need to be, armed and ready to go against these guys because they are not going to like it. They're not going to like it. Bill Kristol already hates him. So the one thing you can say about Trump is that, with Mars on the ascendant in Leo, apparently he's got his part of fortune on his ascendant too, which is a really, I forgot about that. He's got, it's like, so I go back and forth with Trump. Like one day I'm like, really? Why? And then he fires Bolton. I'm like, yeah, great. This is the game. This is the Gemini game. This is the design the design of disruption in his chart, in his life. It's an interesting ride. He's got some issues coming up with the economy now, and he is really getting on the Fed to lower interest rates because he knows that things are not right. They're getting indicators now that things could just slide right off the shelf and we could belly flop into a recession. As gold rises, the dollar falls, and gold's been rising. So Trump is trying to buy time with the Fed. Trump should just nuke the Fed. Wouldn't that be great? It'd be fantastic. Nuke the Fed, set up our own national banking system. Pay China. Just do whatever you need to do. Whack the budget. Pay China. Get the debt out. Get the debt out. And let the Rothschilds come for the rest. All right, what's Netanyahu up to? This is what he's up to. Right there. You see, now what he's doing is that this is just the other day, yesterday. So while Trump is firing Bolton, Netanyahu is talking about the annexation, right? The annexation of Gaza. So ultimately, this right here, this little patch will represent the Palestinian people. That's it. That's it. And he's doing this because he believes that, number one, it'll help him get reelected. It'll help you because they'll get more settlements, more land, dispossess the Palestinians. Apparently, there's more rockets that are being fired off. I mean, that thing is, that is a short fuse ready to be lit at any point in time, probably not too distant future. So he's working now on shrinking the Palestinians' footprint and giving them even less. And the world just sits idly by and says, UN doesn't do shit. I wonder how Yael reconciles all that, being that she's such a lover of humanity. Anyway, so he's hustling now. He's hustling to get this done because he's trying to stay in power. This is all what politicians do. Left, right, doesn't really matter. Their goal is to just stay in power, retain power. So there's a lot going on right now, and we're only 9:25 into this day, just 9:25 into 9/11. But the Bolton thing is really, really interesting because there's something there. There's something there about the association with 9/11. And we're going to talk about it more, right? It's going to happen. We're going to talk about it more. The associations with Bolton, with 9/11. It's going to start to seep up like methane. And the day's not done. The day's not over. Very interesting. Interesting timing. Why did he wait? Why did Trump wait till 9/10? Right? Why? Or 9/9? Why? Why didn't he wait till next week? Why did he do it last week? Timing is key here. It is the Sun-Neptune opposition. And that's when things are revealed. So get ready. Today is a day of revelation. And it's a day of revelation in your own life and in the collective, which is really the theater of your mind anyway. All right. I'm out of here. Thank you for joining me. I don't want to overstay my welcome. Use your head to discern what's real, your heart to stay on what's possible. I'm Robert Phoenix. Have a great day. I'll be back tomorrow with another edition of 15 Minutes of Flame. And with this T-square, this mutable T-square, be kind to yourself, be good to yourself. But, also don't be afraid to look at what needs to change in your life. Because with all the mutable planets, you can make it happen. I'll see you tomorrow.